Hey, Melissa, I can't hear anything. Is the audio on?
Are we good now?
Well, I can hear now. Yep,
Yeah.
couldn't hear
Okay.
before.
I'm just going to call the meeting to order then again. And going to read the recognition of Indigenous peoples. London and Middlesex Community Housing provides housing on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Lunay, Paiute, and Attawandaron. We acknowledge the local First Nations communities in this area, the territory of the Chippewa of the Thames, the Oneida of the Thames, and the Munsee Delaware Nation. We honor and respect the history, languages, and culture of the diverse Indigenous people who call this territory home. Today, the City of London and Middlesex County is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work and live in this territory. So with that being completed, I'm looking for completion and acceptance of the agenda. The agenda has been sent out. I'm going to assume you've had a chance to review, so I'm just looking for someone to move that. Kara is moving it, seconded by Colin. All those in favor? The agenda is accepted. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interests? I don't see any. So we'll go to the approval of the previous minutes from March 21st. Again, I'm going to assume everybody's had a chance to review those. So I just need someone to move the approval. Kara again, Gary Bazaire seconds, all in favor. That is also passed. Communications, Paul, are there any communications?
No.
All right, so what I would just ask you now, Paul, is if you could introduce, I'm hoping, just for the purposes of staff, I'm Phil Squire, I'm chair of the board. The only member of the board who is here is Greg Thompson, who's a member of the board. And then up there on the screen are all other members of the board. Councillor McAllister is also a city councillor. And Mayor Grantham is the mayor of Strathroy Caradoc, and he is also the vice chair of this board. So that's the people that you're seeing now, and sometimes they're all live and sometimes they're not, but tonight people are off doing other things. So Paul, maybe you can introduce for the board people that maybe we haven't seen before at our meeting, so we know who is here.
Okay, I think just introduce the folks that haven't been introduced to the board before. It would be Bushra Walji. You would have seen her at the finance committee a number of times. She is our manager of finance.
And she's near the end of the table on my side, and just wave, why don't you, when you're introduced. There you go.
Sure. The other new face to some of the board members is John Krill, who's our director of asset renewal, who joined us end of April, I do believe. So he is new, taking over the portfolio that was managed by Trevor Whittington, who has returned to his base role. So just take the opportunity to thank him for his work over the last year in that. And then Sunil is our interim director of finance, who is sort of here with us for 6 months or so, just to help us through just the audit, the budgeting, and those pieces as we look to fill that role on a permanent basis. And Sunil has been with us for about 4 to 6 weeks now.
Yeah.
So
good week.
yeah.
Great. So on behalf of the board, I think we've got everybody.
I think we met everybody else here at the board.
Either online. Sometimes I don't recognize people because they were online.
So yeah, I think this, you may be less familiar with Lisa Luther, who's our manager of community engagement.
Know Lisa.
Yeah.
Okay.
Less familiar. And Tim Rudrow, who is our community safety manager.
Right.
So they would appear at the committee level, but not necessarily at the board.
Great. So on behalf of the board, welcome. We're glad to see you here. It's great that you're here. Paul mentioned that one of the things we have talked about is hearing more from not just Paul. We like Paul, but not just Paul. So, don't be afraid to tell us sort of something that you think might be interesting to us or important to us. We're happy to hear it, and that would be great. So with that completed, there are no delegations I'm aware of, no presentations. So we're going to go to the first matter on the agenda, which is staff report, the CEO's report. So Paul, I'm going to turn things over to you, and maybe you can just go through the report and anything that's sort of important. We would have had a chance to review it, but.
Yeah, thank you. And through the chair, assuming that you've had a chance to review, just highlight a couple of quick things. that we're as sort of in some of the reports, we're revising our quarterly performance reports and our KPI reporting that has been presented to the board year over year, probably for the last 4 years. So we're just going through a process in 2024 to update those, add more service standards and those types of things. So each quarter, you'll see a new version following a similar format. So if you have feedback on the versions in the report, I'm happy to take that because we want to make sure it meets the needs of the board. The other thing just to highlight is the Ontario Nonprofit Housing Association Conference is scheduled for November of this year. So there are 2 seats or tickets set aside for board directors. So we're just interested to hear through the chair who those 2 directors could be. So just putting that in people's minds. And I think the matter of sort of awareness that the board should be aware of that we are sort of looking at our space planning. And one of the things we've identified is that our lease is up for renewal in about 18 months, 2 years till expiry, but we need to determine renewal in 18 months. So we're going to have to sort of do a longer term space planning exercise to determine how long we stay at this site. Based on current development approvals, this site will not exist really in about 10 years. It will be a park. So we will need to sort of make a decision. So there's lots of options to purchase an office location, include office space as part of a regeneration project, all kinds of options. We'll sort of work with the landlord on a short-term option. We don't want to get locked into the site if it's going to be a construction zone, because that's not going to be friendly for our tenants or our staff. So we'll sort of start those conversations, and we talked to the City of London real estate folks, and just to sort of get a sense of what's going on in their environment. So stay tuned. You'll be coming a future report probably in the next by the end of the year on where we're thinking and if we need to engage somebody to sort of help us make that decision.
I'll go through with the board of people who may be interested in going in the fall, and I'll just get back to Melissa. Is that what?
Yeah.
You
We
want
have
me to-
plenty of time. We just wanted to make sure
Yeah.
everybody's aware.
Not a problem. Okay. So I'm just going to get someone, this is just to receive reports. I'm just going to get a mover and seconder to receive it. Greg, will you move it?
Yep.
And Councillor McAllister will second it. So any questions for Paul on his report? Anybody on the screen, anybody remote has a question for Paul? Oh, Kara, were you just giving somebody the finger, or were you just? No, you're okay. Anybody else?
So I have
Go ahead,
a
Greg.
question,
Yeah,
just through
go
the
ahead.
chair, just out of curiosity, how many square feet do you have here and how many offices in terms of the space planning needs?
We've got about 11,000 square feet here.
Okay.
And this is really our primary site. We have a few sites where staff primarily have been working remotely out of, like drop-ins, and we're
Right.
looking at the capacity of those to make those more permanent office locations. And we do have 6 staff of our capital team right now working up in the Kent Street office. So that was more of a satellite office. We do have funding to build 2 community-based offices, one in this year in 24 to open in 25, which will be at our Warncliffe locations. And the other will be incorporated into the new Southdale phase 2. So we're starting to build that out. And part of it is talk about our operating model in terms of which staff need to be centrally located, which should be in a community. And also it will start the question on hybrid remote, which, you have to build the capacity to actually operate effectively there. So that's the process we're looking at. So we'll be building out 1 community office for opening in January, which will alleviate some of our current stress issues in the space.
Anything else? No, that's good. Anybody else have anything? All right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor to receive the report? That matter is passed. The next matter, and I just want to say to everyone, there's food over there and it has to be eaten, and you can see they're all not here. So somebody, Greg, will you lead this group at some point and please don't be shy about eating the food because we want to eat it. The next matter is the reports and business. The first 10B is the Finance Audit and Risk Committee reports. I understand the deputy chair and mayor, two titles. You were chairing that meeting. I just wonder if you have any introduction to the reports that are in the first package.
No, the only comment would be they were big shoes to fill, Phil. But I think they were all self-explanatory. It was a little bit of the Trevor show. It was 3 reports, and thanked him for his efforts. I think that sums it up. They're all pretty self-explanatory.
Thank you. So why don't we move the package of reports? I think they're all just none of them need to be separated out, I don't think. So 1 through 6, we will, if we get those moved and seconded, then we can ask for any questions. So that'll be moved by Mayor Grantham, he presented them, seconded by Gary Bazaire. So any questions, and that's the reports which are under 10B 1 through 6. I know there were people at that committees that went through. No questions?
What pages are those in the handout?
Okay. Let me just. They start for me on page 13.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's a series of reports. I can't tell you.
You go to 40.
Go to 48, 13 to 48. So they were sent out in advance. So. That's
Okay. Yeah. There's an issue with
Go ahead.
page 22
Okay.
with the furnace replacements.
Mhm.
Yeah, I just have some concerns about maintaining these furnaces. Like, I looked at the dollar amount for how much it's costing to put these furnaces in. It's over $1 million. And I've tried bringing up my concerns with property services through Amber at Housing about people leaving windows open during the winter time, and for long periods of time, people leaving window air conditioners, windows missing. Like, I don't want to see these furnaces go to waste with this amount of investment. Like, I'd like to protect the investment as much as possible. So I'm coming from the point of view of a tenant who sees this all the time. And I'd really like to see these things last. I wonder what can be done to monitor the units from the outside to see that nobody is abusing the furnaces.
All right. Who would answer or provide it? Trevor, is that something you would answer, or is there someone who's the asset? Do you want to answer it?
Well.
Who wants? I just want to know.
I can
Why don't you
take-
start and then?
So, yeah, so I think, and through the chair, that's a great question, Kathleen. And, we're investing in improving the infrastructure. And the question you're raising, is how do we adjust tenant behaviors and make sure that we have the right policies and programs in place so that people aren't, cranking the heat and opening the windows wide open in January so that
Yeah.
we're not heating the outdoors, as my mother used to say, or what, so that we're sort of mindful of the cost efficiency of that. I think that's a little separate from the capital investment being made. But it is something we've talked about. So we could come back to the People Service and Housing Committee with a report on that. And those types of things for me would be included part of our green planning, where we're doing tenant engagement on the things that they need to consider about. Because you're right, the air conditioners that sit in windowsills in January and February, there's a lot of heat loss and draft, and that has an impact on not only our energy consumption, but also maintaining the asset. There's moisture going in, we're not able to manage that properly. So I think we can come back to the People Service and Housing Committee in August and talk about the air conditioning policy and what we can do to encourage better tenant behavior. Yeah, that's the appropriate place for that.
Can I just follow up on that? I'm just thinking how would you, like, let's say you have a tenant who says, you know what, I like having my heat up and I like my window open a little bit in the winter. Get lost, quit bugging me. Like,
Yeah.
And I know that sounds weird, but
So-
what do you do? Because it doesn't seem to me that it's grounds for eviction or something like that.
No, you're really, that's why we said behavior, right? You're really looking for better tenant behaviors. The challenge with our townhouse communities built in the seventies is they're on bulk, they're on group meters, so that each unit is not individually metered. So you can't incentivize somebody to have good energy efficient practices because it's gonna reduce their own costs. So you have to find different ways to engage and appeal with them. We can put a policy in place that requires window air conditioning to be removed by certain dates and face repercussions if they're not. So there's things we can do, but ultimately you want to find the best way to get the most compliance. So that's part of what we'll have to sort of work
So
through.
again, just to follow up, so places we're building now, are we correcting that by having individual? Or are we not allowed to do that, or is it inclusive?
Yeah, in our Southdale community, we're going to individual meters for electricity but we're also building in air conditioning. But the way that system is set up, the way we're doing it is we're not gonna be able to recover all our cooling costs. So the electrical costs for the system and running the fans that move the cooling air, will be able to have the tenant cover, but not all the costs,
Right.
just because you just can't get the natural gas separation and the other unit separation. So that is part of the plan, is
Yeah.
to transfer the cost down where we can and where it makes sense, because we're also adding cooling systems to deal with the extreme weathers that we're experiencing.
Kathleen, does that help with the issue that you raised? It'll come back to the committee that you're on. You're on mute. I didn't know if you wanted to.
I know, I was just trying to unmute myself. It wasn't cooperating with me. Yeah, I just, you know, when you live in housing and you see, you know, things like broken windows that have been broken for 6 months' time and not repaired, and people are gonna notice these things just driving down the street, like, what is that doing to the heat system? So, I mean, I had to say something. I tried reaching out, like I say, to property services, but I didn't hear back. So I thought I would use this opportunity to speak up about it. So
Yeah,
thanks for listening.
And I think now it's gonna come to the committee, which is exactly what you should do, and then we can follow up on it and see where we get to. So thank you, Kathleen. Any other,
Awesome, thanks.
any other questions about those finance reports? No, they're being none, then it's been moved and seconded, so all those in favor? Those package are approved. So the next, there's 3 reports. The People Service and Housing presentation is separate from, did that go to the Finance Committee? I'm sorry, I wasn't there.
No.
No, so it's a separate matter. So if we can look at reports C, D, and E, which is on page 3, we'll just move those as a package, then see if staff wants to make any comments, and then if there's any questions. So somebody prepared to move and seconded, moved by Kara, seconded by Mayor Grantham. So those are the 3 reports, C, D, and E. So Trevor, do you have any comments you want to make about C and D in terms of the issues in those reports, including if there were any comments at the committee that you'd like to just mention? Oh,
They're all 3 for approval.
yeah,
So, and number, I think it's, so C is the audited financial.
Yeah.
There's comments, and it's Sunil and
Oh.
Bushra. And so just.
oh, sorry, it had
Yeah,
Trevor's name there.
Sorry.
Okay, so why don't we start with the audited financials, and you can make any comments you wish. You don't have to, but if you have something, what we're looking for, I think, as a board, and we talked about it, is we don't need a review of the whole report. We've read it, and if we haven't, that's our fault. But if there's something in there that you want to bring to our attention because you think it's important to us, good or bad, just let us know at this point in time.
Well, just coming, late into the audit process, when I joined the corporation and, heard from the auditors on the finance committee, they didn't find any significant issues to report to the board. I mean, no misrepresentation, no issues with the controls, no issues with the any fraud or anything. So they gave us a very clean opinion on the financial statement. So
Great.
From that perspective, I think there's nothing more to add to this.
Great, thank you very much. And then the Reimagine Phase 2 update, I'm sorry, who was going to present on that? Go ahead, Trevor. Through the chair.
Just a couple of quick things to highlight here. We had a good discussion at the finance committee meeting. There's a couple parts to this report. The first is to acknowledge the fact that we contracted with an architect to help design us through the first phase of the Reimagine project. The tender RFP went out for that in 2021, and we engaged with CGS architects. Initially, the contract was, the RFP was based upon an estimated construction value of $19 million. As the master planning process took place, the scale of the project increased and our construction value has now gone up. So the first piece that we're looking for approval on here is to acknowledge the fact that we are, as the construction value goes up, the contract is approximately 3.7% of construction value. So as construction value goes up, the architecture fees go up linearly as well. So we're looking to get approval of the increase for the phase one fees to 1.05 million, different value. The second piece to this report is talk about phase two. Phase two, again, there's many efficiencies which I talked to in the report, but we're looking to proceed with CGS as our prime consultant for phase two as well. We've had conversations at the finance committee about the fee structure that they proposed to us. We've gone back to them and asked for some efficiencies, and they've been able to find some we've had a fulsome discussion on how they came up with their fee breakdown, and a lot of that is based on recommendations from the Ontario Architecture Association. If you're doing kind of a copycat building, the OAA proposes how fees should be spelled out. We've gone back, as they say, further and asked for them to look for some efficiencies. They have come back to us and they cut almost $70,000 off of their cost. So we're now looking for approval to proceed with CPS for $657,000 is their costs for phase two.
So has this been amended since the committee to reflect that?
So we can share the revised recommendations.
Boy, right here, on the spot.
We think we are.
All right, so we're gonna share this new recommendation. Making me dizzy. There we go. Can the people on screen see that?
Yes, we can. I can.
So maybe you could just point to what the change is and how much in those two amounts, whether it should be that amount, I would think the 657.
That's correct.
So it's a reduction of how much again?
We went from 734.9 to 657. So
All right.
7,000.
Great. So that'll be the updated recommendation.
These are the updated recommendations you see before you.
Great, thank you very much.
And I believe the full proposal that CGS architect, the amended proposal, was sent circulated to the board today.
All right, great. All right, so let's do the last report and then we'll have any questions on all of them directed to whichever one is the security contract extension, Andrew.
Thank you, through you, Chair. We brought this report forward to the Finance and Audit Committee, which I think is one of the first times I've actually had to attend that committee. So it's nice to see some of the board members. But this is really just an extension we're seeking in the current contracted service to September 30th. So the original approval went to the end of this month, so end of May. Tim has been diligent, and since he's joined the organization, in sort of reworking some of the roles and responsibilities of our contracted service, and we weren't quite ready to go back out to a fulsome RFP. We have completed that work now, but for the timing for getting it out into the public and then having it come back to the board, we needed just a little bit of additional time. So that's why we're seeking the September 30th date. There's no additional budgetary cost to this. All of the additional costs, like they're maintaining their pricing. But it's all covered under the approved 2024 security budget, so there's no additional ask from the board. And I think that that's good, unless there's any specific questions. Tim is here, I can certainly.
Right, well, we'll see if there's questions. We're gonna do all three reports in terms of questions, so. They've been moved and seconded, so now let's go to questions on any of the three reports. And if you just want to point out the report you'd like to ask a question about, and we'll go from there. So anybody on the screen? I have to say, it looks like it was reviewed in a fairly fulsome manner at committee, so there may not be a lot. No, so it looks like we've moved and seconded report C, D, and E. So all those in favor? Excellent, so those are passed. The next matter is it says a people service and housing presentation. So just before we start, there wasn't quorum at the people service and housing presentation. You'll know that the chair of that committee, unfortunately, because of issues related to conflict with his job, he was no longer able to stay on the board, so he had to resign. And I just want to say how much I enjoyed working with John, just in terms of his approach, his ideas, his desire to bring issues forward. I really enjoyed working with him, and that was not, I don't think, for any of us, a very happy event. He has a new job in the government, and he has a conflict that he has to deal with. And so I work for the government too, and I can say the same thing. It's touchy, really touchy. So I survived and he didn't. And so I have survivor's guilt at this point in time, but I think we'll miss John, and I didn't want that to go by without saying that. His approach, his whole way of doing things, I found refreshing. So I'll leave it at that for now. We do, and I'll say this again, we're looking for, and will be recommending a replacement to the board which will go before the SPPC this Tuesday, I think. Am I right about that?
Yeah.
Tuesday. So for those of, I'll try to be there. The counselors who are there, we expect your support. You know, not pushing you, but we have a very good candidate. From the last pool, we had actually two top candidates out of that pool. One of which is obviously here, and we had another candidate. So as for now, we didn't have quorum, so we're going to go through these reports. So the first is the People Service and Housing presentation. Says LMCH leadership team, and I'm not sure what this is, but.
So just for everybody's perspective, recognizing that we're bringing a fulsome package to the board that would have been reviewed and fulsome at the committee, and acknowledging that you probably reviewed the package. The leadership team and the manager will review the high levels for each report.
That's what we want.
Like through a structured presentation, and then they're happy to take questions after that. Just that way we get the key points out, we bring the salient points forward, and the board has an opportunity to ask questions.
So is that presentation going to cover all of these reports?
Yes.
All right, so before you make your presentation, why don't we get them moved and seconded, and then they're only informational reports, so then we'll be able to deal with the questions when they arise. So I can't see the screen, so you're gonna move.
I'll move.
Greg's gonna move, and I'm gonna second. So now it's on the floor, and staff will now take us through. And by the way, that's a great approach. Thank you very much. Somebody's got to eat, okay? Right? Greg?
I was waiting for 6, and we got a couple minutes.
All right, I expect big things out of you, and I expect people to follow.
So we'll start
Go ahead.
the orders. Over to Dirk.
Thank you, everybody. So in terms of what they're seeing on the board. Yeah, so we've just continued on with the trainings that we did with the previous Human Resources Governing Committee. We've included that into the Bush Committee. So the numbers that we're providing is just really to provide information to the board in terms of what we're tracking as key performance indicators for the HR department. So obviously, staff being the lifeblood of the organization, it's important for us to put tabs on what is our staffing complement, and when they do depart, what are the reasons and how we fill them in. So what you'll see on the current slide is just information around how we've compared with our staffing complements moving from Q4, which was a good one for us in 23, we achieved full staff and complement for a month and a half, which was great. Then in Q1, we've had a few departures, but through some other hirings that's been ongoing, we've been able to maintain that consistent staffing complement. The reason why we've been able to do that in a short quarter is if we look down at our recruitments, that our average recruitments during the first Q was 27.3 days, which is extremely fast. We don't expect that to continue. The reason why we were able to maintain that is we had other recruitments ongoing. And oftentimes you might end up with a couple of good candidates. So when that occurred, we used some of the additional referrals from existing staff or candidates from previous recruitments in order to have a quick turnaround time. I just want to say that although it's great, we do anticipate that probably in future quarters we'll move closer to what our target range is, about 50 to 60 days from date of posting until start of hire. Obviously, that might fluctuate depending on the nature of the position. Certain scarce skills, the leadership roles will obviously take longer time. So you can just take us to the next page. The other that you'll find in the report is obviously labor relations. So we've continued to maintain, I would say, relatively stable relations with our labor relations partners. So we've had a few grievances filed, and we would also see that the majority of those grievances were resolved, or although it might not be reflected in these numbers, you'll probably see them in Q2. So we do maintain that. Our arbitrations ongoing is one, and although we've had a few disciplinary investigations initiated, the majority of them quick turnaround. Something that's new to the board that would not have been present previously is our workplace attendance. So we've introduced this now for the first time, and the reason for that is that, as we mentioned in some previous HR governance committee reports, that we are paying closer attention to sort of staff wellness and staff attendance. So there's a couple of initiatives on the go in terms of trying to introduce more, I would say, staff engagement, staff wellness, which we'll perhaps touch on later, but also through our attendance management program. And the only real way for us to maintain whether or not these initiatives are effective is to have some form of baseline attendance statistics, and then over the course of the year, track our initiatives to see if that's having a positive impact on staff attendance. So what you're in essence seeing is just the average sick time and vacation time for various categories of employees during the quarter. So to interpret what that data is showing you is, if we're just looking at the top line, for Q1, the average per month amount of sick days used for a union group was 56.7. So what that means is in every month on average, we're losing 56 days, people day per month due to a sick. For a non-union group, it's 31, so it's slightly less. So that means on average, every employee in the organization takes 0.92 days of sick leave per month in the quarter if you average it out. Now, of course, the devil's in the details. We do have some individuals who's off quite a lot, some who's off not at all. But we try to average that and sort of look at it as a block in terms of what our initiatives are, and that's how we track it. So I really just want to highlight that because that is something that will be new and something that will be presented, and we have some of the initiatives that we can, will help us track and see if they are successful, and obviously the proof is in the pudding to see whether or not these initiatives are in fact leading to greater and more reliable attendance with our staff. I think. Okay, well, what do you have to please? So yeah, I think that is the highlights. There is some additional information. Normally, other than just the KPI reporting, we do try to just get a snapshot within the HR department, which is in the report. I think the major advantages to highlight to the board is that we had a little bit of blip coming into the year. So we are a department of 2, and we lost previous HR assistant, went off on a short leave of absence, and then subsequently left the organization at the beginning of the year. Obviously, for 2 people, lose 1. Capacity is down. We were lucky enough to fill that position with somebody that had previous experience in the department. So we transitioned our previous co-op student who served 8 months with us as well as a project to a permanent position, and that's been quite successful. But obviously that played a little bit of a role just in terms of some of the initiatives. we'll provide a more fulsome report in the next report, but as well, we have our major health and safety initiative with VC, or consulting report, which came back in the quarter. We've moved on implementing that, and we'll provide some more concrete solutions to the next quarter to that. And then the big one is we've engaged in collective bargaining, which has been more consuming as well. So I think people are wondering why there is a little bit less information in this report than you have seen in Q3 and 4 of previous years of last year. But just being, collective bargaining was a primary concern for the department and the organization, and we focused a lot of time in the first quarter attending to that. And I think that's really all. And I think we're gonna go through everything in this question.
Yeah, I can't see if there's questions on the screen until we're done all the reports. Thanks for,
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Gonna pass the mouse. Thank you.
All right, the next is tenant services reports for information, and so Andrew's gonna provide us with Director of Tenant Services update.
Thank you, and through the chair, this is a little bit briefer than my usual. We historically, I've brought a combined report that includes all of our community safety and our community development initiatives, but we've sort of broken them out because they're doing enough sort of work on their own in their own departments that they warrant a little bit of further sharing of information. So for me, this time we're a little bit light, as I say. The Social Housing Operational Advisory Committee, for those who may not be aware, just to give a little bit of background. So it's a committee that is chaired by the City of London, and there are representatives there from tenants groups, nonprofits, co-ops. We're there as well. And a lot of the work that you'll see come forward through communications and stuff as we continue to share this information with committee and the board for the housing division notices, HDNs. I think you'll hear us talk about that. Those drafts all flow through this committee for feedback from the tenants that attend, the other housing providers, and ourselves, along with some of the City of London staff. So what they sort of have just been discussing in recent, there's a couple of new HDNs that are under draft right now for occupancy standards is one of them. And so we'll probably see that flow out to us as a directive from the city in the next, probably in the next couple of months, once that's finalized. They have discussion around the acquisition of the former Fairmount Public School, and just sort of talking about what the future residential development might look like for that property. These are some of the sort of conversations that they're having. There was a sector meeting there yesterday, so I don't have the reports. One of my staff attends, but I can't give you a sort of more up-to-date information. I will let you know, just I'll skip over to the Reimagine. So as this indicates, we've gone out and we've done the initial door knocks and dropping off of packages. And when we wrote this, we had been able to connect with 13 of the 21 households. We are now able to say that we've connected or left packages with tenants at all but one of those. And we have actually had 13 of the 21 households reach back out with us and start to make some of their housing selections for transfers. And we have begun offering. We actually have made 2 offers and showings to be able to start to transition families out, which is a little bit faster than I'd anticipated. I was anticipating we wouldn't see any of that really before July, like once the school season was over. But yeah, we're well on our way, so that's good. We shouldn't have an issue with getting to that December 31st timeline that we need to hit. Connectivity table again. So this is a group of organizations, support organizations. So John Howard Society is there, Canadian Mental Health Association. We are there. Youth Opportunities, the police, the fire department. And this group has been put together really to try and assist where we can with individuals or families that might not have supports and that are at elevated risk of either losing their housing, having their children apprehended by CAS. So when we become aware, or one of the other agencies becomes aware of an issue, it can be brought to this table. Everybody can information share, and we work towards trying to find who is going to be the lead, like which agency will be the lead, and make a connection within a 48-hour time frame to start to offer the connections and the services that we think may be of assistance to an individual. So in this first quarter, 9 of the 14 referrals that the board, that the connectivity fellow, had were actually from London Housing for individuals that were needing a higher level of support or were at risk of starting down the path of the eviction process. So I think that's an important one. The meeting seniors where they're at. This was a grant that we was our first grant ever that we actually were successful in acquiring. And I've talked to the board and to committee about this in the past. The goal of this grant was really to do some outreach for seniors that were feeling isolated. So it was an opportunity to connect with the seniors, to offer. There were some art programs, some music programs. There was a mural that we painted. They painted. I did not get involved in the painting of the mural in one of our seniors' buildings. So that grant now and that project has been finalized. We've put our final report into to the ministry and then just sort of talked to them about what the outcomes were and the positive feedback that we had from the tenants about the increased awareness that they then had about programs that we had available for them and how they're going to be able to come out and participate. So that's probably enough from me. There is a more fulsome report attached to the board package. It's PSH 08 is the report, but if there's questions later, I'm happy to field any questions. I think we're going to, I was originally going to speak to all, but we're going to let Tim and Lisa actually speak to their reports quickly for you tonight.
Go ahead.
Okay, so really just to get into this, the big point of what I wanted to bring to the board was to highlight some of our statistic gathering information, as well as kind of briefly share how we use this information to help keep our residents safe. So currently, we'll kind of touch with some key improvements since March 1st when we operate under our new enforcement model. We've really improved communication within the residents that are reporting things that happen after hours to managers that are both overseeing them, both the following day and immediately. We've closed a lot of communication gaps, as well as we've been able to improve a lot of physical security at some of our high-risk locations that don't necessarily have static guards in place. So a good example of this is 122 Baseline or 1481 Limberlost. The after-hour alarm response portion has really allowed us to give our residents a peace of mind that even if the CSU is off duty at 1600, you still have someone from LMCH that cares. CCTV access and collaboration with law enforcement has really improved a lot. We found that London police have learned that they're able to get in touch with housing in a very quick fashion. What used to require a lot of communication with our OCM and eventually working with the police, we're now able just to send our supervisor over to wherever the police are needing assistance, assist them, clear the call, help them, help us, and make sure that within housing, if a resident is involved in, say, a serious incident, housing gets notification of that the next morning for a proper follow-up. The other thing really has been the vendor accountability and management. Our vendor is working hard. What the most important thing for us is honesty and integrity in a vendor. They're honest about their open hours. They have good integrity, and they are working with us through their challenges. A little highlight I put up there is a deficiency instances. So these are essentially written complaints that either I've caught or I've received about our contract vendors. Now they go down towards April. They go up and down as you have more interactions, you'll have more complaints. But we are seeing we're treading in the right direction in terms of written complaints from either staff or tenants regarding our contract security staff. And just to share with the board some data, this is Q1 data. We've really come a long way in data collection in Q1. These are specific to do with the top 5 incident categories. I'm happy to take any questions as to how the categories are made up, what they encompass, as well as the top 5 locations with the most incidents. The one thing I will leave the board with is if there's any kind of specific information, data, information they'd like to see for the next meeting, I'm happy to get it, amalgamate it, and put it out there for everybody. Any questions?
We'll do questions at the end.
Question at the end.
And then,
Okay.
I'm just still looking at it. It's pretty interesting.
okay.
Okay,
You can,
next is Lisa.
so just my report does go into more detail, but to give a high level overview, this is just reminding the board about the approach that my team takes with community development within our communities. So we utilize an asset-based community development approach And when we're really looking at developing programs and making sure that they're tenant informed or tenant led whenever possible. And we always make sure that they're attached to our community engagement pillars that we have, which are focused on health and wellness, education and skill building or building capacity, employment and contribution, and connection and community. So one thing that I did different this quarter that I have intentions to do every quarter is I'm really trying to think about how I can demonstrate impact about what we are doing. So I put together a couple of infographics to demonstrate. So this is around the community development. So my team led events and initiatives that we had. That kind of breaks it down into different buckets to demonstrate some of the impact that we're having across all the communities. So in this one, you can see everything ranging from fresh produce and essential groceries to CD initiatives, to pet examinations, community conversations that we're having. The community needs assessment, we did one this quarter, and income tax and preparation filing. So this is all just quarter Q1. So from January until March. And I also did one for the community partner impact because it's really important. We don't want to forget about the number of community partners we have that are really doing great work, because we wouldn't be able to have as much impact on our tenants without the support of our community partners. So this is just a very high level overview. So I will clarify the way that it's written around the 2,826 seniors. That's not the number of seniors, it's the number of health supports that seniors have done. I can see how that could be interpreted a little different, but we had some really great partnerships with Literacy Link to deliver digital literacy sessions, confidential health testing, all ranging to ice cream socials. We had PHL students that led community conversations and engaged 325 tenants in their community, after school programming, CMHA facilitated groups. So this is just an overview, and then sometimes I think it's nice to have the visual as well as the numbers to really demonstrate that impact. And then the final one is tenant-led events. So it's really important in our strategy to have tenant-informed and tenant-led events. And they love bingo. We've had over 100 bingo events in the first quarter, but this is really like, you know, it is kind of, you know, interesting to see it, but it's what's important to them and what's about makes them feel connected to the community. So we support them every time they want to do that bingo event. 39 food programs and events across our communities that tenants are leading, that they're bringing back to their community to bring this to address food insecurity. 4 celebrations that we've had, from birthdays to celebrations of life, for exercise and movement classes. And these are, again, tenant-led. So tenants who have taken the lead to bring that into their community, 82 coffee and tea groups, and over 136 just social activities that range everything from crafts and cards and games and music. So at the end, after we're through everything, I'm happy to get into any more detail or to answer any questions. If the board has any suggestions on what you'd like to see next quarter or how I can bring the information forward, happy to receive that feedback as well.
Thank you very much. So we're going to move on to the vacancy report. Grenade your hand.
I'd already set it off, so just
Okay, so our report will now represent the quarterly modeling versus the monthly that we were presenting previously. Our targets will still remain the same at 3% or less, which we successfully achieved over the past 2 quarters. We're entering into the summer months, which potentially will lead to a higher tenant turnover, increasing the number of units in active restoration, but we're confident to be able to maintain the 3% threshold. At this time last year, there are 102 units in active restoration. By improving the internal process, we are now sitting at 40 units. The timeline for completion on average per unit was 100 days, and we've now reduced that to 84, which amounts to a quicker turnover of approximately 16 work days, or approximately 3 weeks on average. And the tenant services team has been able to efficiently lease all the units made rent ready within a timely manner. Want that one? Well, I can say, I mean, I sort of say the same thing every time I'm asked to speak to this, like, it's, we don't, we do have our challenges and some of our units, it takes us a little bit longer to offer, there are some times when it takes 10 or 12 offers before we get somebody, depending on the building that we're having them go to, but the tenant placement staff have been really, fantastic at maintaining their targets. And, we see little fluctuations every now and again, but we understand them and they're corrected within the next month. So just always really pleased to see the work that all of them are able to put forward. They all know, the need and the value for us organizationally and for all of the individuals looking for homes. So always pleased to see how well they do. That's all. Thanks.
Okay. And then we're gonna move on to the work order and service report. Christine again.
So over the past 2 quarters, we've seen an increase in the total work orders received, significantly in regard to the pest control with the implementation of the integrated pest management program. With the other categories remaining fairly consistent. The majority of calls have been non-emergency and routine.
All right, are we moving on to the next? Yeah, so we've got the last report in this area will be the integrated pest management update.
Okay, so with the integrated pest management, this slide indicates the percent of units being treated by mandate with the target set at 10%. So William Street is an adult building that was sitting at a 38% infestation. So we proceeded with a full building inspection and treatment plan. And this process has allowed us to identify the units with infestation that were unreported by tenants, which represented about double the amount that we were tracking. So we have a total of 1,174 units that have reported pest concerns, but we are only actively treating 680 of these units. So the challenges that prevent treating these units include no access, tenant refusal, units not being prepped adequately, which has led to us creating an additional internal process for escalating these units to the management team to assist with tenant cooperation in order for us to be able to successfully treat units. And the chart demonstrates that our adult buildings are the most challenging in comparison to senior and family property. And this slide represents that the integrated pest management has been addressing our challenges. No access, units not prepped have declined month over month. Tenant refusal are behavioral issues, which we are addressing through the escalation process. And as you can see, the tenant refusal are consistent, but the escalations are increasing. This one is just to show that some of our tenants are unable to prep their units, whether it be physical constraints or mental illness. So in the first quarter, we have assisted by doing unit prep for 41 units to successfully be able to treat the units.
Great, thank you very much. So I think those are the reports in their entirety. They've been moved and seconded. Absolute pleasure not to have to listen to Paul for that period of time. I'm sure he's happy for the rest. So there was a lot of information in those and good information. And I think that's certainly what the board has been looking for. So it's really helpful. So maybe now we'll go to questions arising. I know it's a lot of material, but now we'll go to questions. So if we can get that off the. Great. And there's, okay, so I'm going to go in like title seniority. So I'm going to a mayor and then I'll go to a deputy mayor. So Mayor Grantham?
As it should be, Phil. They're really good reports. I love the style and the format. They're all good information, but I want to give shout out to two, and that is the community development update and the community partner impacts. I know we tend to focus on pure numbers and KPIs, but I found these very interesting. So kudos to that team because it shows that our housing is more than KPIs and numbers, it's about community involvement and community engagement. So thank you for that. So great work.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
So I want to touch on both the last set of slides that we saw around the pest treatment as well as the vacancy report. Really more of a comment, but somewhat of a question. Does the board or does Mr. Chisholm and his team have any objections if those slides are taken? And I guess I'm voluntolding Councillor McAllister to hopefully co-author a note to council with me. But I think that those need to be sent to our colleagues on council. I think that Councillor McAllister would agree with me that some of us are bombarded by other members of council saying London Middlesex Community Housing is doing nothing about pest treatment. And I, for one, am tired of that nonsense from a couple members of council who don't bother to ever watch our meetings or to read the reports that are made publicly available. And, when you look at the number of tenant refusals for entry, the number of escalations, you can't successfully treat a building when you've got that many refusals because bugs don't pay attention to what unit they're crossing boundaries in. They cross between units. And if you've got one refusal on a floor, suddenly the whole floor is back to being infested with pests again. So I think that councillors really need to see that one of the challenges here is lack of tenant cooperation. And hopefully as we continue to deal with our tenant placement agreement changes and we see some tenant changeover in some of these buildings, some of that will get better. But I think we need to push back on the negative attitude that LMCH isn't doing anything about this. Obviously, there's a tremendous amount of time and energy going into it. And part of the challenge is that there are tenants who don't want to accept responsibility for maintaining their units and reporting problems. And that should not be blamed on LMCH staff. That belongs with the tenant. And I think that councillors need to realize there is an issue here with tenancy behavior, not just about LMCH trying to do their best to manage these problems. So I guess I'm just looking to see if there's any objection to those slides, both on the building treatment, but I think also in advance of our shareholders presentation, the vacancy slides are a valuable one to share too, because that's always a big question. And when we're at I think if memory serves, that slide for Q1 of this year was actually 2.1%. Which is the lowest I've ever seen it in the 5 years I've been on council. I think that good news of the team's effort needs to be shared as well.
Yeah, can I just start? So I will have to go to this session, where we shareholders meeting. One of the challenges with that is, you have a not just limited time, but you can't get into a debate with a councillor. It's just not something we are entitled to do, nor should we do. So these are public reports, and I think if they're shared with elected officials who are from the funding agency, I don't see why permission is needed.
Yeah, no, they're public reports. They'll
Yeah.
be posted on our website on form, so yes, feel free to share.
Yeah.
And, my offer for any counselor who's sort of concerned about what's going on, we get the individual tenant escalations. If they want to talk about what's happening across the portfolio, more of a system kind of conversation, they just have to reach out. But we're always open to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Well, the meeting, I was going to say the council meeting hasn't officially been called to order yet, Phil, but I'm happy to move a time extension for you right now. So that you can debate a counselor if you wish.
I'd love to.
But yeah, I will I'll collaborate with Councillor McAllister on that then. and see if he and I can come up with something we're both comfortable sending around as a communication. And that might be something that we proactively try and do a little more often from these reports to change the false narrative that's happening at council around some of the efforts that are happening.
And the only thing, if you're gonna share something with council formally, if you could give us a copy, I don't wanna repeat it if I come, in terms of, you know, what we're gonna say, so that would be great. I think it's a great idea, and again, they're public reports, so the shareholders should be able to see them, so thanks. Anything further on the reports? Go ahead, Brent.
So I have questions for Dirk, Tim, Christine.
Okay, let's start with
Or-
you.
I'm gonna run
Yeah.
through here. And I'll start off and echo Mayor Grantham's comments that, I appreciated the soft stuff, the community updates and everything was going on. It's a lot of good information for me to take in as being one of the newer members. Dirk, just the labor relations and workplace attendance stats, you just had the Q1 in isolation. I know you commented that you just started taking that. Do you have any anecdotal evidence or thoughts as what the trend line is? Is that up, down, stable?
It's not possible to turn right now. I mean, we had requests from management to look at potentially supplementing some of the other initiatives or something like attendance management. So I think that's really a program that launched in last year into this. So we do at this point in time, no. So that's why it's important to start actually including the reports in those baseline numbers so we can see, what is actually where we're at. And hopefully, provide us additional information. Unfortunately, really the first quarter we're looking at that. That's just
Okay, and then the second part, just the turnover, 6 people in the quarter. I annualize that, looking at the staffing complement. That's about 25% turnover. Are we okay with that? We have
No, not at all. Staff turnover was a massive component when we started, or at least when I started the position. So it's been quite a focus for us in the first year in terms of moving up the department. We've done quite a few initiatives to bring that down. But ultimately, yes, we will have staff turnover. So without getting into too much detail, because we have to do mindful of information stuff, but obviously 2 individuals as part of the organization, we want to make these things. You can see the values aligned with the organization going forward. Both of them had, I think, less than 1 year of service with the organization. So for us, I think that's the lesson we really need to take away from there. Is just that we should really need to be mindful when we're hiring individuals to make sure they're as good match. You don't want to be in a position where you hire people, bring them on board, make the investment, and then I think that was a big lesson. But we've also had individuals who retired during Q1, which I think that's everybody. So and then also just continue obviously having individuals who just they work, do really good work, they enjoy the tenants, they find the work meaningful, but the dollar speaks, right? And we do try to provide a good package of components, but ultimately if you're young and money is a major concern, then we're not necessarily going to be able to match some of the salaries that we see in the private sector. So we are trying to address that through some other initiatives, which we can maybe talk about later as well. So yes, we do pay very particular attention. We do try to have exit interviews for every individual leads. We do try to engage with them on the reasons behind that, and we do try to keep numbers. I have all that information from previous intro from last year. I just didn't necessarily bring it up to this year, but if it's helpful, I'm happy to kind of pull that and share them and sort of see the data from last year in terms of that.
Thanks. Who did you have next? You want to ask a question?
So you missed the finance and audit committee. I was grilling Trevor and everything. So I'm just, trying to carry on here and understand a little bit more. And I'm learning as we go through here. Tim, just thank you for the stats on that. I'm just curious on the issues that you had for trespassing versus access control. I saw a comment in the report that there are sometimes tenants or guests bypassing access control. So how is that trespassing or is that an access control issue, and how do you categorize those two?
Gotcha. So basically, in the simplest form, we use access control as a way of measuring the efficacy of we use trespassing as a way to measure the effectiveness of our access control processes. So essentially, in simplest terms, if an individual attempts to access an area they shouldn't be able to access, and the access control stops them, it's an access control issue. So the most common example, individual wants into one of our properties. I go to the door is locked because I need a fob to get in. I can't get in. I sit there. Security shows up, says, "What are you doing here? You move along." That's access control because you weren't able to get into our facility. We kept you out as best as possible. If you breach that threshold, then you're inside of one of our properties. We call that trespassing.
Okay.
So what we hope to see is trespassing, then they level off, and then eventually we get more access control than trespassing, so we know things are working.
Okay, thanks. Then just wanted to talk about the vacancy, and I just had an observation on that. So
Go
yeah,
ahead.
2.1% thumbs up. That's great. I looked to the market, see whether that's a good benchmark or not, and I like that LMCH includes the units that you're getting prepared for rent in that, because that's a good measure for one of the goals in the organization. But if you go to a CMHC market report for rental vacancy, if a unit's not available for rent, it's not included in there. I think London's about 1.7% overall in the market. So I guess kudos to Andrew and your team when you just look at the units that you're trying to lease out, you're 0.9% on that. So you're beating the market, so you're doing well there. Christine, just on the work orders for pest control, you commented that there are lots of units that were previously unreported. And is that a contributing factor in the large number of work orders seeing now? I guess my question is, because people are now seeing the organization doing more about pest control, is that bringing out more people to say, hey, I've got a problem too?
Yes, absolutely. But we are also doing surrounding unit treatments as well. So we create work order for additional treatments that we're doing with the benefit measure.
Adam,
I'm
great,
I'm
thanks.
done.
No, it's good.
Can I go eat now?
No, we're gonna take, you know what I'm gonna do? We've got one more report after this. We'll do that, and then before we go in camera, I'm gonna make everybody eat. They can't leave. They cannot leave this room unless they get something to eat. All right, any other questions or comments? Great, I guess from my point of view, this is something that we really wanted is to hear more from the staff and less from Paul. I'm gonna keep saying that. It just sounds great. And I think that's good for Paul and it's good for all of us. And it also creates a level of familiarity between staff and the board, which I think is good. We're not looking, and I know we're not looking to do gotcha stuff. That's absolutely what this board does. We're trying to become ourselves better educated. So that when people say things to us about what are you doing about this area, we can have a meaningful conversation with them. And I think that is the primary purpose of this. We have faith in our staff. We are supportive of our senior staff and the people who are in this room, and that won't change, but we're also very pleased to get this today. So with that being said, all those in favor for all those reports? Thank you. So then the last report is staff report, service agreement, landscaping services report, and that is Christine.
Yes, and through the chair, this report is a request for approval for an extension of the current agreement of landscaping with S&K Landscaping for the sum of $192,000 taxes. So LMCH released an RFP for both landscaping and snow removal. But after the initial interest of 5 vendors, there were only a few proposals submitted. So we made the decision to cancel the RFP and we'll release it later in the fall to put a multi-year contract in place for both landscaping and snow removal. So S&K Landscaping has been with LMCH for approximately 7 years, has given us good service. So just a request to continue this contract.
All right. So can I get a mover and seconder then? Questions moved by Greg, seconded by Mayor Grantham. So questions, comments on this report? This is for approval, I take it. Yeah. Approval of this contract. There doesn't appear to be any questions, so all those in favor? Thank you very much. So that takes care of the in terms of new business inquiries. I don't have anything. I had mentioned already that we'll be going on Tuesday to try to get approval for our new director. It was really nice that we had 2 qualified candidates ready to go, and we took one already, and now hopefully, if all things are good, then our next candidate. About this candidate, there's one thing I have to say. One of the questions she was asked about Sarah before she left was, well, what interests you most? Like, what is the one thing you really want to know about? And her answer was interesting. She says, well, I want to know how you go about turning these buildings into communities. How do you do that? And I thought that was really good. It was much better than anything Greg said. So it really created a problem for us. No, Greg said lots of good things, but I thought that was a very astute thing to say. You know, how do you do that where you're dealing with this type of housing? So I'm obviously hopeful. We're all hopeful that she'll get approved. Mayor
Yeah,
Grantham?
just want to welcome Greg to the team because it only took one meeting for you to poke fun at him. So that he's officially
Yeah, you're
part of the team. He's been initiated.
Yeah. Okay, so now I need a motion to go on camera, but before we go in camera, we'll take a short break so people can grab something to eat. I don't think we have anything else, or do we? You're looking at me like we do.
No, we have one in-camera item, so.
Who's gonna stay and who's gonna go?
So SLT can remain.
Yeah.
The rest of the team can.
Do they know who the SLT is?
Yes. So the bargaining committee, John.
Okay, so let's have a motion to move in camera, moved by Greg, seconded
Well,
by.
before we move in camera, are we calling like a 5-minute recess? So people
Yeah, we're
can
gonna
grab-
eat. Yeah, we're gonna grab food and.
Yeah, so we should call a recess and then go in camera.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, so let's recess for, let's say 5 minutes to get, or do you need, anybody on screen need longer? No? Yes? No? So we'll recess for 5 minutes. People who are leaving, take food with you. People who are here, please get food, and then we'll come back in 5 minutes and we'll move in camera.
Thank you.
Somebody pack me a doggy bag and make Phil deliver it after the meeting.
No.
Yeah, I'd like some brought up to Alumni Stadium because I'm a little peckish.
Moved by Mayor Grantham, seconded by Kara, all in favor? Not bad. We're finished 20 minutes early. Thank you, everyone. Take
I'll
care.
see you tomorrow, Sean.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if you're coming in for 10.
I will be there.
I will see you then.